Don't touch her again. One quiet man ended her longest winter. The town lay under a thick blanket of snow. The streets were silent, except for the soft crunch of boots against frozen ground. Trees stood bare, their branches coated in frost, looking like delicate sculptures under the pale winter sky. In the midst of this quiet, Maya walked alone. Her coat was buttoned tightly around her, her scarf wrapped snugly against the biting wind, yet the cold outside was nothing compared to the winter she had carried in her heart. Maya had lived through months that felt endless. Each day seemed to stretch longer than the last, filled with challenges that no one else could see. People passed her in the streets, nodding politely, exchanging brief words, but they didn't notice the storm that had settled within her. She had faced unkind words at work, dismissive gestures from people she had trusted, and moments when she felt invisible even in her own home. Every encounter left her feeling smaller, as if the world were a place too heavy for her to carry alone. She paused for a moment and looked around. The snow-covered houses were dark, some with smoke curling from chimneys. Windows glowed faintly with warm light, showing families inside, laughing or talking softly. Maya felt a sharp pang in her chest. She missed that warmth, that comfort that seemed so simple to others. For her it was distant and almost unreachable. Her hands were buried deep in her coat pockets. She walked slowly, watching her breath curl in the air. Every step left a temporary mark in the snow, a reminder that she was here, that she existed, though she often doubted it. Life had taught her to keep her feelings hidden, to protect herself by not trusting too easily. People had let her down before. People had hurt her before. She didn't want that to happen again. Maya's winter wasn't just the snow outside. It was the emptiness she felt inside. It was in the moments when she returned home to an empty apartment, when the phone didn't ring, when her messages went unanswered. She would sit by the window for hours, watching the snow fall, wishing for someone to notice her, someone to care. It was a quiet desperation, one that made her feel both fragile and strong at the same time. Fragile because of the loneliness, strong because she kept moving forward despite it all. As she turned a corner, she noticed a figure across the street. He was standing still, watching the world, or perhaps just watching her. Maya's first reaction was caution. She had learned to be wary of strangers, to keep her distance, to guard her heart. But something about him was different. There was no rush, no tension. He wasn't staring aggressively or intrusively. He was quiet, calm, almost like a shadow blending into the winter landscape. Maya kept walking, her eyes occasionally glancing toward him. She felt a strange mixture of curiosity and unease. Who was he? Why was he standing there in the cold, watching? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. Perhaps she was imagining it. Perhaps the long months of winter had made her too sensitive, too alert to every detail. She focused on her steps, letting the snow crunch beneath her boots. The days passed in similar patterns. Maya continued her routine, going to work, returning home, walking through the snowy streets, and every time she felt his presence. Sometimes she saw him near the corner store, sometimes on the sidewalk near the park. He never approached her, he never spoke, yet Maya felt as if someone was quietly guarding her from the distance. She couldn't explain it, but there was a comfort in knowing that someone noticed, that someone was aware of her struggles without needing to intervene yet. It was during one particularly harsh morning that the moment came. Maya had left her apartment later than usual, rushing to her car. The wind was fierce, cutting through her layers of clothing, making her shiver despite the warmth of her coat. She heard footsteps behind her, quick, heavy, and deliberate. Her heart tightened. She turned slightly, seeing a man approaching too closely, his shadow looming over her. Panic rose in her chest. She didn't know what to do. Her hands trembled as she reached for her keys, her voice caught in her throat. Just as fear threatened to overwhelm her, the quiet man appeared from the side. He stepped in between her and the stranger. His presence was calm but firm, a solid barrier against the chaos. "Don't touch her again," he said, his voice low but carrying authority. The stranger froze, surprised by the confidence in the man's tone. He muttered something under his breath and stepped back. Maya's heart raced. She couldn't believe what had just happened. She felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. For months, she had carried the weight of fear and discomfort, and now, in a simple moment, someone had stepped in to protect her. The quiet man turned toward her, not imposing, not intimidating. He simply nodded once and stepped back, giving her space. Maya felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her chest, a spark of trust, a hint of hope. She wanted to speak to thank him, but the words didn't come. Instead, she simply nodded in return, feeling an unspoken connection. After that day, Maya noticed the small ways her life began to change. She felt less burdened by the weight of fear. She walked taller, breathed a little easier, and even smiled quietly to herself when she thought of that moment. The snow no longer seemed as cold, the streets no longer as lonely. It wasn't that her problems had disappeared, they hadn't. But there was now a sense that someone was watching over her, quietly, without judgment, without expectation. Even at work, the world seemed slightly brighter. Maya began to hold herself with more confidence. She answered questions, shared her opinions, and faced difficult situations with a steadiness she hadn't felt in months. People noticed the change in her demeanor. They didn't know the reason, but Maya did. It was the quiet man who had reminded her that she mattered, that her safety and well-being were important. The winter continued, harsh and relentless, but Maya felt a shift inside her. The longest winter of her heart was still present, but the ice had begun to crack. She could feel warmth creeping in, subtle and gentle, like the first hint of sunlight after a storm. And even though she didn't know him well, she didn't know his story, his name, or why he had intervened, she felt gratitude. She felt the possibility of change, of healing, of life beyond fear. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the snow-covered hills, Maya walked through the park. The wind was softer, the snow falling gently around her. She saw him again, the quiet man standing near a tree watching the world. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She offered a small smile. He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging her progress, her strength, her resilience. Maya realized that winter could not last forever. She had survived her longest winter, not by fleeing or hiding, but by noticing the small gestures of kindness and courage around her. Sometimes, it was a stranger stepping in at the right moment. Sometimes, it was simply the presence of someone who cared without needing recognition. That quiet man had reminded her of both. As she continued her walk, the snow crunching beneath her boots, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. She had been through a long, difficult season, but she had endured. The winter outside reflected the winter inside her, yet she had found a flicker of warmth, a spark that promised spring. And she knew, somewhere in the quiet distance, someone had helped her find it. Maya's heart felt lighter. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt ready to face it. The snow still fell, the wind still bit, but she walked with a newfound strength, carrying hope in her steps. The quiet man had shown her that courage could be gentle, that protection could be quiet, and that even in the coldest, darkest season, a single act of kindness could light the way. For the first time in a long while, Maya believed that she could survive winter. She could survive life, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could learn to trust again. Days passed after that winter morning, yet Maya could not stop thinking about the quiet man. His presence had been so calm, so steady, that it lingered in her mind like a soft echo. She had always been cautious around strangers, wary of hidden intentions or sudden disappointments. Yet there was something different about him, something that felt safe without needing explanation. At work, she found herself glancing out the window, imagining him walking past the snow-covered streets. The world seemed quieter somehow, and she noticed small details she had missed before. The way the sunlight reflected on the icy branches, the sound of her own breath in the cold air, the gentle crunch of snow underfoot. It was as if seeing him had made her more aware, more present. Her days followed their usual routine, but Maya began to notice small changes in herself. She smiled more often at coworkers, spoke up during meetings, and even dared to laugh at small jokes. The winter that had seemed endless in her heart felt a little less heavy. She did not understand it fully, but she knew that her encounter with the quiet man had sparked something within her, a tiny flame of hope and trust. One evening after work, Maya decided to walk through the town square. The streets were quiet, the air crisp and sharp, but not unbearable. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck and stepped carefully on the icy sidewalks. As she passed the old fountain in the center of the square, she saw him. The quiet man stood near the fountain as if waiting. For a moment she froze, unsure of what to do. Her heart raced with a mix of curiosity and nervousness. She wanted to turn away, to keep walking as though nothing had happened. But something inside her, the part that had longed for safety and kindness, urged her forward. He noticed her at the same time and offered a small nod, just enough to acknowledge her presence. Maya felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. She returned the nod and walked a few steps closer. They did not speak at first, simply standing a few feet apart, watching the snow fall around them. There was a comfort in the silence, a quiet understanding that words were not always necessary. After a few moments, Maya spoke. "It's cold tonight," she said softly, almost as if testing the waters. The quiet man turned to her fully and nodded. "Yes," he said, his voice low but steady. "The wind is strong, but the snow makes it beautiful too." Maya was surprised by the calmness in his tone. There was no pretense, no rush, no attempt to impress. He simply spoke with honesty, and it made her feel at ease. For the first time in months, she felt that she could breathe without holding her chest tight. They began to meet more often, always in passing, always brief but meaningful. Sometimes it was at the park, other times near the grocery store, or walking along the snowy sidewalks in the early morning. Each encounter was small, yet it built a quiet connection between them. Maya began to notice the subtle ways he showed care, standing slightly closer when someone approached too fast, offering a warm smile when the cold made her shiver, and simply being present without demanding anything in return. One afternoon, as Maya left work, she found herself followed by someone who made her uncomfortable. The man muttered things that made her heart pound in fear. She froze, unsure how to respond, her hands trembling as she reached for her phone. Panic rose in her chest, memories of previous moments of fear making her legs weak. Then, as if out of nowhere, the quiet man appeared. He stepped between Maya and the stranger, his posture calm but firm. His eyes met hers for a brief second, conveying reassurance without a word. "Don't touch her again," he said, the same quiet authority that had startled her the first time. The stranger backed away immediately, muttering under his breath before disappearing down the street. Maya stood frozen for a moment, her body shaking with relief and adrenaline. She looked at the quiet man, wanting to thank him, to say something meaningful, but the words caught in her throat. He nodded at her once, a silent acknowledgement, and then stepped back, giving her space. Maya felt an overwhelming mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Who was this man? Why had he chosen to step in for her, over and over, without asking for anything in return? The snow began to fall softly around them, and Maya felt a strange peace settle in her chest. She realized that she had been carrying fear and doubt for so long that she had forgotten what it felt like to trust someone, even briefly. Yet here was a person who offered that trust simply by being present. After that day, Maya began to pay closer attention to her surroundings. She noticed small acts of kindness in her town, neighbors helping one another, shopkeepers greeting familiar faces with warmth, people smiling at strangers. Each encounter reminded her that the world was not entirely harsh, that even in a place that felt lonely, there were pockets of care and compassion. Her connection with the quiet man grew in these small ways. They would exchange nods, smiles, or brief words, each interaction reinforcing the sense of safety he brought into her life. Maya began to look forward to these moments, not as a distraction from her loneliness, but as a reminder that kindness could exist in quiet, steady forms. One evening, as the sky darkened and streetlights glowed softly on the snow, Maya found herself thinking about the first time he had intervened. The memory of his calm voice, the firmness in his tone, and the way he had stood for her replayed in her mind. She realized that she had spent so many months hiding, protecting herself, doubting her worth. And yet he had seen her, truly seen her, without judgment, without expectation. That realization stirred something within her. She felt a cautious hope begin to grow. Perhaps she could allow herself to trust again, not fully, not yet, but in small, careful ways. Perhaps she could learn that the world could hold both danger and safety, cruelty and kindness. And perhaps, with patience, she could find people who would stand for her when she needed it most. As days turned into weeks, Maya's winter life began to shift. She walked with a lighter step, spoke with more confidence, and even allowed herself brief moments of joy. The snow still fell heavily, the wind still bit sharply, but the emotional weight she had carried for months felt a little lighter. She began to notice the quiet man in ways that were more than chance. Sometimes he would appear at the same place she chose to walk, offering a reassuring presence. Sometimes he would help silently in small ways, moving an icy branch out of her path, or handing her a dropped scarf without words. Each gesture was small, but to Maya it carried immense meaning. It was not a romance, not yet, and perhaps not ever. It was a quiet bond formed from care, protection, and consistency. In a world where she had felt ignored, dismissed, and afraid, he was a steady presence. A reminder that she mattered, that her safety mattered, and that kindness could exist quietly without fanfare. One particularly harsh evening, a snowstorm had covered the town in a thick layer of white. Maya struggled to see as she walked home, her boots sinking into soft snow. Her car was blocked by a drift, and the wind howled against her face. She felt the old fear creep back into her chest, the fear that she could not manage, that she could not protect herself from the cold or from harm. Then, through the blizzard, she saw him. The quiet man had come, appearing like a figure out of nowhere. Without a word, he helped her free her car, his hands steady and sure despite the snow and wind. Maya wanted to speak, to thank him, but words were unnecessary. His presence alone was reassurance enough. After the storm, as they stood in the soft glow of a street lamp, Maya realized something profound. For months, she had felt frozen inside, trapped in her own winter. Yet here was someone who did not rush, who did not demand, who simply stood for her when it mattered most. And that quiet act of consistency, of care, was enough to begin melting the ice in her heart. She began to see her world differently. The snow no longer felt like a barrier, but like a soft covering over the possibilities that awaited her. The wind no longer felt sharp, but like a reminder that she could endure, that she could move forward despite the difficulties. And in the quiet man's presence, she began to feel a sense of trust, hope, and even courage that she had not felt in months. Maya realized that life could be harsh, and people could be unkind. But she also realized that there were moments of unexpected grace, moments when someone would step in quietly and change everything. That quiet man had shown her that winter, no matter how long or cold, could be softened with care, presence, and quiet courage. As the days went on, Maya continued to notice him, each encounter reinforcing her growing sense of hope. She began to understand that healing did not always come with dramatic gestures or loud proclamations. Sometimes it came in quiet ways, a steady presence, a firm word spoken at the right moment, a willingness to see someone and stand for them without asking for anything in return. For Maya, the long winter was far from over, but it was no longer unbearable. There was warmth creeping in, subtle and gentle, reminding her that life could hold both challenges and unexpected kindness. And as she walked through the snow-covered streets, she knew that even in the coldest times, there were people who could bring light into the darkness, if only they chose to be present. Winter had begun to ease, though the chill still lingered in the air. Maya felt the difference in herself more than anything else. She no longer carried the same weight of fear and loneliness. The quiet man, whose name she had learned was Ethan, had become a gentle presence in her life, though he never intruded or demanded attention. He moved through her world like a steady thread, quietly connecting the scattered pieces of her heart. Their meetings had become almost routine, though always unscripted. Some days she would catch sight of him walking past the bakery, sometimes near the small bookstore where she liked to spend her lunch breaks, and occasionally at the park where she sometimes went to sit and watch the snow melt slowly into spring puddles. Each encounter was brief, sometimes just a nod, sometimes a few exchanged words, but it brought a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. Maya began to notice subtle changes in her own behavior. She smiled more easily, laughed quietly to herself, and even shared small stories at work without fearing judgment. For so long, she had hidden her thoughts and emotions, convinced they would not be understood or valued. Now the possibility that someone could see her for who she was, without criticism or expectation, encouraged her to step a little closer to the world again. One chilly afternoon, she found herself at the town square, shivering slightly as she adjusted her scarf. She spotted Ethan near the fountain, as always observing quietly. She hesitated, unsure if she should approach him, but something in her urged her forward. She walked closer and offered a small, tentative smile. He returned it, and it was enough. "I didn't think I'd see you here today," she said softly. He tilted his head slightly, a gentle smile forming on his lips. "The square is peaceful," he said. "It's good to pause and notice things sometimes." Maya looked around, taking in the quiet scene, the snow melting in puddles, the sunlight reflecting off icy branches, the faint laughter of children playing at a distance. "Yes," she said. "It is peaceful." She realized that for the first time in a long while, she was noticing these small details instead of being consumed by her fears and worries. Their conversation was light but meaningful. Ethan never pressed her to share more than she wanted, never offered advice unless asked, and never judged her for her feelings. That gentle patience taught Maya something profound. Trust could be built slowly, carefully, and without pressure. Over the following weeks, their connection deepened naturally. Sometimes they walked through the snow-covered streets together, sometimes they exchanged small gestures of kindness. Ethan would hand her a scarf left behind at a shop, or help her lift a heavy bag from the ground. Maya began to feel that someone was quietly rooting for her happiness, without needing recognition or reward. Even at work, Maya noticed a difference in her own strength. She faced challenging moments with a quiet confidence she had not possessed before. When a coworker dismissed her idea in a meeting, she no longer crumbled inwardly. Instead, she calmly explained her perspective, her voice steady, her mind clear. The small acts of courage she displayed in everyday life mirrored the support she had begun to feel from Ethan. But winter was not over, and challenges still appeared in unexpected ways. One afternoon, as Maya walked home, she felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. A group of people had gathered near the corner where she usually passed, speaking loudly and making her uneasy. She felt her pace quicken, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her bag closer. Just as panic began to rise, Ethan appeared at her side, quietly and without fanfare. His presence alone was grounding. The group noticed him and moved aside without confrontation, as if sensing the calm authority he carried. Maya's heart slowed, relief washing over her. She wanted to speak, to thank him, but words were unnecessary. His steady presence said everything she needed to hear. That evening, Maya reflected on her life and the changes she had felt. For so long, she had believed that help and kindness were rare, that life required her to face difficulties alone. But Ethan had shown her otherwise. He had stepped in quietly, consistently, and without expectation, proving that one person's care could make a lasting impact. As winter began to thaw, Maya's confidence grew. She started spending more time outside, enjoying the warmth of the sunlight when it managed to break through the gray clouds. She walked further, exploring streets and paths she had previously avoided, noticing the life and movement around her. With each step, she felt stronger, more present, and more capable of facing her challenges. One day, as she strolled through a park lined with melting snow, Ethan appeared again. This time, he did not approach immediately. He waited a few moments, watching her with quiet attention, allowing her the choice to engage. Maya smiled and waved gently, and he nodded in acknowledgement. "I like this time of year," she said softly. "It's like the world is slowly waking up." Ethan's expression was thoughtful. "Yes," he said, "and sometimes people need a little time to wake up too, to remember what warmth feels like after a long cold." Maya felt a shiver of understanding. She realized that the warmth he referred to was not just the sunlight, but the steady, reassuring presence he had provided in her life. It was trust, kindness, and care, a gentle, unwavering support that had allowed her to begin opening her heart again. Over the next few days, their encounters became more frequent, though always natural. Sometimes they walked together in silence, listening to the soft sound of melting snow beneath their feet. Sometimes they exchanged thoughts about the town, life, or the small joys they noticed in everyday moments. Maya felt that, for the first time in a long while, she could share her thoughts without fear or hesitation. One afternoon, as they passed a small cafe, Maya felt a sudden wave of gratitude. She stopped for a moment, looking at Ethan. "You know," she said softly, "I don't think I've ever felt so safe before, not like this." Ethan looked at her quietly, his calm gaze steady. "You've always had strength," he said. "Sometimes people just need someone to remind them of it." Maya felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief and hope. It wasn't about romance, not yet. It was about trust, support, and recognition. For so long, she had felt invisible, small, and alone. Now she felt seen, valued, and protected, not through grand gestures, but through simple, consistent actions. Life continued its steady pace. Maya continued her routines, went to work, and walked the streets she had once avoided. Yet the presence of Ethan transformed the way she experienced each day. The cold no longer felt as sharp, the streets no longer as lonely, and the challenges she faced no longer seemed insurmountable. She had learned that small acts of care could create powerful change, that steady support could provide strength when she needed it most. One evening, a particularly strong wind blew through the town. Snow swirled in the streets, and Maya found herself struggling to maintain her balance. She paused, gripping the railing along the sidewalk, wishing she had someone to help steady her. And then, as if on cue, Ethan appeared. "Here," he said, offering his handspring was slowly arriving in the town. The snow was melting, leaving behind patches of green and the first hints of flowers pushing through the earth. The air felt lighter, warmer, and somehow alive in a way that the long winter had never allowed. Maya noticed the change more than anything else. She could feel it in her steps, in her breath, in the way the sunlight touched her face. But even more than the weather, she felt a change inside herself, something she had not experienced for a long time. Ethan was still there, quietly and consistently. He didn't announce himself, didn't force his way into her life, but his presence was steady and reassuring. Maya began to understand that his care was not about grand gestures or dramatic words. It was about being present, noticing her, and choosing to stand by her without asking for anything in return. That simple constancy had begun to heal her, and she felt it with every encounter. One afternoon, Maya decided to take a walk along the river that ran through the town. The ice had broken apart, and the water moved freely, sparkling under the afternoon sun. She thought about the months that had passed, the long, cold days that had seemed impossible to survive, and the quiet moments that had slowly begun to bring her back to life. As she walked, she saw Ethan ahead, near a bridge that overlooked the river. He was watching the water, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm. Maya hesitated for a moment, then smiled and called his name softly. He turned, and when he saw her, a gentle smile appeared on his face. She felt a warmth rise in her chest, a reminder of everything he had brought into her life. "You're here again," she said, her voice light but sincere. Ethan nodded. "I like this place," he said quietly. "It feels like a good spot to pause and think." Maya looked out at the river, noticing the way the sunlight danced on the water. "It's beautiful," she said. "The winter feels so far away now." He glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "And sometimes people feel far away from themselves too," he said. "It can take time to find warmth again after a long, cold season." Maya thought about those words. She remembered the months when she had felt invisible, frightened, and exhausted. She remembered the moment he had stepped in for her that first time, saying, "Don't touch her again." She realized that it had been more than protection. It had been a reminder that she mattered, that she deserved care and respect. That single act had been the beginning of her journey back to herself. As they walked together along the river, Maya felt a sense of peace she had not known in months. The snow was gone, the streets were alive with movement, and the world seemed brighter. But more than the change in her surroundings, she felt a change within herself. She was stronger now, capable of facing difficulties without panic, able to trust, and able to allow herself small moments of happiness. Ethan spoke softly as they walked side by side. "You've grown," he said. "I can see it in the way you walk, the way you look around you. You're noticing things you didn't notice before." Maya smiled. "I feel different," she admitted. "I feel like I can breathe again, like I'm finally seeing life instead of hiding from it." He nodded, his gaze steady. "It's not easy to come back from a long winter, but you've done it." The words made her pause. She thought about all the moments she had been afraid, all the nights she had cried in silence, all the times she had doubted herself. And yet here she was, standing in the warmth of spring, noticing life and walking forward. She realized that the quiet man who had once simply appeared to protect her had given her more than safety. He had given her hope. As the days continued, Maya found herself opening her heart even more. She allowed herself to enjoy simple pleasures, the smell of fresh flowers in the market, the sound of children playing near the park, the warmth of sunlight on her face. She laughed more often, spoke more freely, and even started to plan little joys for herself, like visiting the cafe she had always wanted to try or taking longer walks along the river. Life felt richer, fuller, and she realized that she had begun to heal in ways she had never imagined. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Maya and Ethan walked together in silence. The air was warm but gentle, carrying the faint scent of blooming flowers. They stopped near a bench overlooking the water, and she sat down, feeling the solid wood beneath her hands. Ethan stood nearby, his presence calm and grounding. "You know," she said after a while, "I never thought I would feel this way again. I didn't think I would trust someone or even feel safe." Ethan's expression softened. "It takes time," he said. "And sometimes someone just needs to show you that you can be seen, that you can be cared for." Maya looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, something she had not expected to feel. "You did that for me," she said quietly. "And I don't know how to thank you enough." Ethan shook his head gently. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "I only did what anyone should do. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be seen." Maya's chest tightened with emotion. She realized that for so long she had carried the weight of fear, doubt, and loneliness, believing that no one would ever notice or care. Yet here was someone who had done exactly that, consistently and quietly, without asking for anything in return. As night fell and the stars began to appear, Maya felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about the long, harsh winter she had endured, the months that had felt endless, the days that had seemed too heavy to bear. And she realized that those months had been a part of her journey, a preparation for the moment when she could accept warmth, care, and trust again. Ethan remained near her, not pressing, not intrusive, simply present. Maya felt the significance of that quiet presence. It was not dramatic, it was not loud, but it was steady, unwavering, and real. That steady support had allowed her to heal, to grow, and to finally step out of her longest winter. Over the following weeks, Maya continued to explore the world with a new sense of confidence. She visited places she had avoided, tried things she had feared, and even shared her thoughts more openly with friends and colleagues. Each small act of courage was a reflection of the trust and care she had received from Ethan. She had learned that strength could grow from gentle guidance and quiet support, not just from facing challenges alone. One morning, she found herself at the park again, standing near the river where the ice had once blocked the flow. She watched the water move freely, clear and sparkling under the sunlight. Ethan appeared beside her and she felt the familiar sense of calm. "I never imagined spring would feel this good," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "It's the same with people," he said. "Sometimes after a long winter it takes time for warmth to return, but it always comes." Maya nodded, feeling the truth of his words. She had survived her longest winter, not by rushing, not by escaping, but by allowing herself to heal slowly, step by step, with someone quietly walking beside her. She had learned to trust, to hope, and to embrace life once more. As they walked back toward the town, Maya felt the snow finally gone beneath their feet, replaced by the soft earth and the first green shoots of new life. The world seemed brighter, the air warmer, and her heart lighter. She knew that life would still bring challenges, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. And she had learned that sometimes, a quiet presence, a simple act of care and steady support could change everything. Maya looked at Ethan, and for the first time she felt a deep, unspoken gratitude. He had ended her longest winter not through dramatic gestures, not through words, but simply by showing up, by standing for her, and by reminding her that she mattered. And in that quiet, patient way, he had helped her rediscover warmth, trust, and hope. The town around them was alive with the signs of spring, birds singing, flowers blooming, sunlight warming the streets. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the air fill her lungs with new life. She realized that the winter of her heart was truly over. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and open to the world again. And she knew that the quiet man who had walked beside her through it all had given her a gift more powerful than she could have imagined. The courage to live fully, to trust again, and to embrace the beauty of life without fear. As she walked home that evening, the sky glowing with the colors of sunset, Maya felt a sense of peace and joy she had never known. The streets were no longer cold and lonely. The snow was gone. The long winter had ended, and with it, the weight she had carried for months had lifted. For the first time, she truly felt free. And in the distance, she knew that Ethan's quiet presence would always be a reminder of that freedom. The reminder that even in the darkest, coldest seasons, one act of kindness, one steady presence could bring warmth, healing, and a new beginning. "Take it." She hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in his. The gesture was simple, but it conveyed a profound message. She was not alone. Someone cared. Someone would be there quietly and steadfastly, no matter the storm. After that moment, Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. The winter outside and within her heart was not completely gone, but it was less threatening, less lonely, and less cold. She realized that healing was not about avoiding challenges or difficulties, but about having someone by her side, someone quiet, patient, and unwavering. As the snow continued to fall lightly, Maya reflected on the months that had passed. She had faced fear, loneliness, and doubt, yet she had endured. The quiet man, Ethan, had shown her the power of gentle courage, of consistent care, and of trust built slowly over time. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt that she could face life with confidence. She had begun to open her heart again, not recklessly, but carefully, allowing herself to feel hope, warmth, and connection. And as she walked through the quiet streets, the snow melting under her feet, she knew that her journey was far from over, but she was no longer afraid to take the next step. Maya's longest winter was beginning to fade, replaced not by dramatic events, but by the quiet presence of someone who cared enough to show up, again and again, without needing recognition or reward. And that, she realized, was the beginning of something far more powerful than she had imagined. A winter finally softened, a heart slowly healing, and a life ready to embrace warmth once more.